And now it's time to look at who was impressive and who was disappointing from this last week in college football. We're going to start with you, Josh. Who's somebody who really impressed you or a team that really impressed you?
Individually, Matt Barkley really impressed me. Coming off a loss to Arizona State, chucks it for over 390 yards. His career high as a Trojan, which he's obviously had a prolific career there thus far with throwing the ball. Teams that impressed me, two obvious ones. Wisconsin, 48-17 over Nebraska. Huge game from Russell Wilson, who's gone to the top of my Heisman list, 255 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Monty Ball, 4 touchdowns on the day. That is absolutely incredible from him rushing the ball. And then Alabama, 35 unanswered in the swamp, really stuck it to the Gators. Took out John Brantley, who's now out for the LSU game, which is critical for Florida's season moving forward. It was an electric crowd to start the game at night, and they just completely took them out of it. So I was very impressed with Alabama.
As was I. Another impressive, I like Case Keenum, the Houston quarterback. He continues to impress, puts up all the numbers. It's a system, I get that, but he threw for 471 yards, a couple touchdowns. That offense was over 700 yards against UTEP. This is a Houston team that may go undefeated. They probably won't be in the BCS talk. They don't play a great schedule, but they may go undefeated, and he's going to continue to put up amazing numbers. As far as teams, how about Michigan's defense? That's a unbelievable turnaround from last year. They're only giving up 10 points a game. That's 4th in the nation, and they're 5th in the nation in turnover margin. I had some stats looked up. They have 16 turnovers forced this year. They had 19 all of last year.
Wow.
So that Brady Hoke has that team turned around. It's a different mentality in Michigan. Another player, how about Andrew Luck and his right hand? Not only can he throw, but he can make amazing one-handed catches. If you didn't see it, it was a late-night game. Catch it the next morning. He had one catch for 13 yards, not impressive, but you had to really see that highlight to appreciate what that was.
Yeah, absolutely. That Luck catch was amazing. A couple running backs from the Big East really impressed me. Ray Graham for Pittsburgh and Dustin Garrison for West Virginia. Ray Graham ran for 226 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game where they just demolished South Florida, who was the number 16 team in the country coming into that game. And Graham just dominated the game the whole way, led to that big Pittsburgh win. As far as Garrison, freshman from West Virginia, he only had 13 carries all season coming into this last week's game against Bowling Green. Ran 32 times for 291 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's a great way to solidify your spot in the starting lineup. Another guy who really impressed me, A.J. Jenkins, the Illinois wide receiver, 12 catches, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns. He accounted for 268 of Nathan Shieldhouse's 391 passing yards in that big win over Northwestern, helping keep Illinois undefeated and ranked. A team that really impressed me that a lot of people might not think of, SMU. Now, I know TCU isn't the exact same team this year, but they had a 22-game home winning streak that was ended by SMU. SMU was up big, let TCU back into it, and let it go into overtime, but put their foot down, would not give up on that game, and end up coming out of at TCU with a huge win. So that was very impressive for me. They're now 3-1 on the season, I believe, with their only loss being to a very good Texas A&M team. But who are some of the guys who disappointed you this week?
I have 3 teams. I have South Carolina, a top 10 ranking, playing at home. They lose to Auburn, who might be better than we think they are. It's kind of a confusing team to figure out right now, just with the way their season has gone. But South Carolina, very disappointing. Steven Garcia continues to play erratic. I'm interested to see what Steve Spurrier does moving forward. Another team, Ohio State, barely avoids being shut out at home for the first time in decades to Michigan State. I make fun of Steven Garcia, but at least South Carolina has a quarterback situation because Ohio State has absolutely no one right now. They lose Posey and Herron for their next game against Nebraska, which is huge, a separate suspension than their 5-game suspension they were supposed to come back from. So, I mean, it could be a terrible season for Ohio State if this keeps happening. And Virginia Tech just laid an egg at home. I know it was raining to start the game, and that may have affected it a little bit. But aside from Hosley, who came out to play, no one else really did for Virginia Tech, in a disappointing performance by the Hokies.
I also have 3 teams, 3 states. I got Iowa State, Utah State, and Mississippi State. Iowa State, they played Texas. None of us thought they would win, but Ames thought they were going to win that game. And Texas came out and just blew them out. I know a lot of people, we have friends back from the Ames area, they were let down by that. And then Utah State, A team you might not think is disappointing, but they blew their third fourth quarter lead this year. It was to BYU. That game was Friday night, I believe. They also lost at Auburn and Colorado State in overtime. So they could be 4-0 with 4 quality wins, but instead they're now 1-3 or 1-4 now. And then we have Mississippi State. They lose to Georgia. It's their third SEC loss. This is a team I thought that would contend in the SEC. That Ralph and Ballard are just not getting it done, and it's really surprising to me. And I don't know what's going on there, but they are just not looking good right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with Mississippi State, a team that I agree that was a real sleeper team in that SEC West. For me, it has to be South Florida, a team that I wasn't on board with to start the year, and then they started to slowly convince me, just showing up every week, and then they just get blown out on the national spotlight game on Thursday to a Pittsburgh team that had already 2 losses. They looked like they were a very average football team before that game. But a 44-17 loss. I know it's at Pittsburgh, but I mean, those big non-conference wins for South Florida don't mean anything if you're going to lose conference games. Navy quarterback Chris Proctor. Navy goes into overtime with the Air Force, and they score. Proctor scores on a 1-yard run and then gets an unsportsmanlike conduct for getting in the face of an Air Force player. They miss the extra point after that. Air Force scores, makes their extra point, Navy loses. I mean, you have to be smarter than that if you're going to play at the college level. Very disappointing in a tough way for the midshipmen to lose that game. Utah, a team that I picked to go to win the Pac-12 South just because USC can. But they're now 0-2 in Pac-12 play. Jordan Wynn got injured during the game. I don't know what his status is going to be for this week. 31-14 loss at home to Washington. They don't have to play Oregon or Stanford this year, but if they're not going to get it done at home or take advantage of opportunities like they had against USC, then it's going to be a rough first season in Pac-12 for Utah. So those are some teams that disappointed and impressed us. Now we're going to go to our NFL 2-minute drill.
Welcome to this week's NFL 2-minute drill. It was a big weekend for the 3 Gs representing the University of Iowa. Chad Greenway and Charles Godfrey had 3 and 5 solo tackles respectively, and Sean Green had 59 yards on the ground and added 47 through the air for his first 100-yard all-purpose game of the season.
We'll look at some Week 5 NFL matchups. We got the 1-3 Philadelphia Eagles traveling to the 3-1 Buffalo Bills. Both teams blew big leads this Sunday. Philly's D will get tested against Buffalo's offense again, and we'll see if the Dream Team can get back on track. We also have the 4-0 Green Bay Packers traveling to the 2-2 Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan doesn't like to lose at home, but when he does, it seems to be to Aaron Rodgers and that Green Bay Packers. We'll see if that rowdy crowd can get revenge from last year's playoff loss. We also have the New York Jets traveling to the New England Patriots. Let's not forget the Jets won 2 games against the Patriots last year, and we'll see if Tom Brady can beat Rex Ryan. Now we'll throw it over to Kyle Hughes for this week's fantasy update.
Thanks, Justin. It's time for our Week 5 Fantasy Watch now. I'm going to have you start Phillip Rivers this week. Now, people were expecting him to have an MVP-type season this year. The numbers haven't quite been there so far, but expect him to come up huge this week as he faces a very weak Denver Broncos defense. You may recall the Broncos allowed over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns to Aaron Rodgers last week. I expect Phillip Rivers not only to have a good week, but to have the very top week in all of fantasy football. Who I'm going to have you sit, that's got to be Rex Ryan's Jets defense. They had a nice week last week against the Ravens. A couple defensive touchdowns, a special teams touchdown and a defensive touchdown, I should say. But Tom Brady likes to chuck the ball around. I think they're going to be able to pick on Antonio Cromartie, and the Jets are going to have their hands full against a Patriots team that wants revenge from last year's playoff game. Now, my sleeper for this week has got to be Cincinnati Bengals tight end Jermaine Gresham. Rookie last season, Andy Dalton becoming a lot more comfortable this year. They're going to start throwing the ball a lot more. Start Gresham. Well, that's all for this week's Week 5 Fantasy Watch. We're going to throw it back to the desk now. All right, and now it's time for our absolute favorite part of the show, picks. Josh, you had a nice week last week, going 4-1. Let's see how you can do this week. We're going to start with Ohio State at Nebraska. Like you mentioned earlier, Dan Herron and DeVere Posey were supposed to be back for this one. Now they're suspended. Who do you see coming out on top?
You know, I almost went with Ohio State before I saw the suspensions to Boom Herron and Posey, but going to go with Nebraska. I think that they'll come back. Taylor Martinez will run the ball, which they failed to do against Wisconsin, which was just really puzzling to me. I think that Nebraska gets a win at home.
Yeah, I think Taylor Martinez is going to be on strict orders not to throw the ball. Let's hope so. If he does that, Nebraska should win. Nebraska's defense not good. Ohio State's offense is even worse than how bad Nebraska's defense is. So Nebraska is going to win this game.
Ohio State, one of their strengths this year was supposed to be their offensive line. They've been terrible. They cannot run the ball. They weren't able to protect the quarterback at all against Michigan State. They only had 178 yards of total offense against Michigan State. Nebraska wasn't able to do anything against that giant Wisconsin offensive line. But the way Ohio State's been playing, I think Nebraska's defense is going to show up and be able to stop a very lackluster Ohio State offense. And Ohio State's defense has still been good, but Nebraska has a difficult scheme to defend. They have so many guys who can run the ball. I like Burkhead a lot, so I think Nebraska, especially being at home, is going to get their first Big Ten win this week. Now we're moving on down to the SEC, where number 15 Auburn is going at number 10 Arkansas. Who do you guys like in this one?
I like Arkansas in this game. They put up crazy numbers against A&M last week throwing the ball. I think this is going to be a really high-scoring game, one of the more fun games to watch, and I think Arkansas is going to go beat Gene Chizik and the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, I've learned my lesson betting against Arkansas this season. They threw for about 1,000,000 yards on Texas A&M in the second half, so I'm going to take the Hogs at home over Auburn.
Yeah, the only problems that Wilson has had in the last couple of weeks is getting banged up by good defenses with a good pass rush. I don't think Auburn's going to be able to get to him. And Auburn was able to slow down a South Carolina offense that had Steven Garcia throwing the ball. Wilson, who was putting up record numbers, is going to be able to put up a lot of points against Auburn. Arkansas gets the win at home. Oklahoma versus Texas, Red River shootout. Both teams, Oklahoma starts out at number 1. Texas starts unranked and is slowly working their way up. Who do you guys like in this one?
I like the combination of Broyles, and I think that he's having a huge season, one of the best wide receiving seasons that we've seen in a long time. The combination of him and Landry Jones is amazing to watch on TV. I'll take Oklahoma.
Yeah, I like Oklahoma in this game too. I do think it will be competitive though, but I don't think that Texas is going to have the firepower to stay with Oklahoma.
Interesting matchup for me. Texas has a combination of a McCoy and a Shipley. That's been very good for them in the past. It's not the right McCoy and Shipley, unfortunately. Oklahoma wins. So now we're going to move to what is probably the biggest game of the week, if it's not that Oklahoma-Texas one. Number 17, Florida, coming off a tough loss to an Alabama team that looks great. Doesn't get any easier this week. They travel to Baton Rouge to take on number 1 LSU.
Yeah, Brantley's not playing this game. I don't think it'd matter even if he did. LSU's defense is too good, and they'll dominate this game. Interesting to see if Jordan Jefferson plays a little more in this game.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Charlie Weiss, it'll be interesting to see what he tries to do without Brantley as his quarterback, but they're going to be starting a freshman, I believe, in LSU, and I just don't see any way that Florida comes out with a victory.
Yeah, that LSU defense, not the one you want to face for your first career start. It's not going to go well for that young man. He's probably going to get knocked around a lot. LSU already turns the ball over a ton and uses those turnovers to take it to the house, get some touchdowns. LSU by a lot in this one. So those are our pick. Quickly, do you guys want to pick Iowa State at Baylor? A couple teams coming off a tough loss this last week.
Yeah, I'll take Baylor without even thinking about it.
Yeah, Baylor easily. Kendall Wright, RG3, too much.
Yeah, Baylor. Robert Griffin III just threw his first interception this last week, so having a heck of a season. We'll recap Iowa versus Penn State. Who'd you guys pick in that one?
Iowa in overtime.
Iowa in a slugfest, low-scoring game.
Yeah, I'm going to take Iowa by 10. They'll be tied at halftime. So I think that's all the time we have for this episode. We want to thank you for joining us once again. We'll be back again next week. For Josh Bolander and Justin Bucklin, I'm Kyle Hughes. Thanks for watching Incompetent Sports Talk. Have a good night.